Basic Brewing Radio is sponsored in part by the American Homebrewers Association. Summer is the perfect time to embark on a homebrewing adventure. Join the American Homebrewers Association for 1 year and receive a free brewing book of your choice to fuel your experience. Discover the joy of enjoying your own crisp, cold beer on a sunny day. Plus, get a free book to spark your beery inspiration. So join the American Homebrewers Association and start tapping into the joys of brewing. Visit homebrewersassociation.org/basicbrewing for offer details. homebrewersassociation.org/basicbrewing. Welcome to Basic Brewing Radio for Thursday, August 24th, 2023. I'm James Spencer. Here at Basic Brewing Radio, we're all about home brewing. This week, Chris Colby of beerandgardeningjournal.com joins me to formulate a recipe for porter, a delicious style that I always love but hardly ever think about. Something sessionable and tasty to head, hopefully, into fall. We also taste my honey IPA that Chris and I came up with on a previous episode. Man, that's a tasty beer. If you want to support us financially, check out patreon.com/basicbrewing. And many thanks to everybody who's helping out, as always. If you go to patreon.com/basicbrewing, you can see a long list of stuff that you can access if you sign up as a supporter. Financial supporters this past week got some bonus audio content. That's something that we rarely do, if we've ever done it all. I'm sure we probably have in the past. Scott Housel, who you heard on last show, he shared the pressure fermentation experiment. He sent a couple of extra beers that Steve and I tasted. We didn't have time during the regular episode, and I forgot that we had them until after I hit stop. So I started the recording back up again to record the bonus stuff for financial subscribers. Scott sent a beer with a lot of ginger infused. So, of course, there were Gilligan's Island jokes. And also a fruited Solera sour beer. Both were really good. And Scott gave us some details on how they were brewed. So there's some actual useful info amongst all the goofiness. I hope y'all enjoyed that. And we certainly did. I got a question on YouTube on our video about brewing the Honey Peach IPA. A viewer asked why I added the honey to the boil instead of adding it to the fermenter. You know, I don't have a good reason, other than I was thinking more along the lines for sugar additions for, a Belgian-style beer. If I have to do it over again, and I probably will, I probably would add the honey to the fermenter to try to preserve some of the delicate honey flavors. However, in that beer, this is my disclaimer. The hops were so dominant in that beer that I'm not sure that the honey would have a chance to stand out too much. I do love that recipe, so I very well may brew it again and add the honey to the cold side instead. Speaking of cold, it's not here. It's really hot, as I'm sure it is where a lot of you are too. So I got an early start on this past Sunday to brew the porter that Chris and I talk about on this episode. I started at 7 a.m., which is early for me on a Sunday for doing stuff, and got done around noon. I probably could have gotten away with shortening the mash and or boil times to, get done sooner. But I was in no hurry, though. It was a fun brew day. I brewed the porter in my Warthog electric system that I got from our good friends and sponsors, Desiree and Dave from HighGravityBrew.com. I also used ingredients that I got through the Build Your Own Beer page on HighGravityBrew.com. That thing is a lot of fun to use. All the ingredients that you would need from a well-stocked homebrew store right there in one place. You just scroll down, open the categories, whether it's base malts, specialty grains, hops, adjuncts, and so on. And as you add them to their bundle, they show up on the bottom of the page with a running total for that bundle. And when you're done, you can name your beer and add it to your cart. And then you can start another beer if you want. And I like the flexibility of shipping. I chose a UPS option that was reasonably priced. And, since we're not that far away from Tulsa, I was able to get it overnight. I ordered the ice pack for $1 to go along with my imperial yeast. And the pouch was still cold, and there was even a little bit of ice left in the center of the ice pack. Your mileage may vary. depending on distance and weather and such. But I thought that was pretty impressive. And, of course, while you're on highdgravitybrew.com, check out all the excellent electric systems and controllers to take the pain out of propane. Use the code EBC75BB to save $75 off your Warthog electric gear purchase. Send them some love for supporting this program for so many years. That's at family-owned and operated highdgravitybrew.com. That's highdgravitybrew.com. Okay, looking back, I think porter was one of the first styles that I brewed because there weren't many available around in our area. It's an easy one to brew, and I'm looking forward to tasting how this recipe turns out. Chris Colby, welcome back to Basic Brewing Radio.
Hey, James. Thanks for having me on the show.
It's another recipe development show, which I get excited about because I get to drink some beer.
Beer.
We're going to talk about formulating a porter, which I'm kind of surprised we haven't done one yet. But before we do that, I want to talk about the beer that we formulated the last time we got together, and that's my Honey Peach IPA. And we each have the base beer in front of us. I didn't want to send you the beer that came out of the keg because it had unfermented fruit juice in it. So just imagine that the beer that you're drinking tastes a teeny bit more like peach.
Okay.
But let me go over the recipe. This is a 5-gallon or 19-liter batch. Into this beer, I put 10 pounds or 4.5 kilograms of American two-row, 8 ounces or 227 grams of Briess honey malt. And these are things that I had left over from, freebies at HomebrewCon, the rest of the stuff. I bought the two-row from highdgravitybrew.com. So anyway, we got the two-row. We got
kitchen sink, bro.
Yeah, exactly. We got your two-row. You got your honey malt. You got 4 ounces or 113 grams of blonde roast oat malt and 7 ounces or 198 grams of flaked oats. And that flaked oats was left over from the Texas table beer that we did before. I mashed that at 90 minutes at 150 degrees Fahrenheit or 65 C, collected my wort. At the beginning of a 60-minute boil, I put in 1 pound or 450 grams of local honey from our friend Caleb, the beekeeper. Here lives real close, along with 1 ounce or 28 grams of Warrior at 13.1% alpha acid for 60 minutes. And I did some IBU calculations, and I didn't think that was going to be bittering enough. So I added 1 ounce or 28 grams of German Tradition at 5.7% alpha acid, which I had as well at the 60-minute mark. At flame out, I added 1 ounce or 28 grams of Amarillo at 7.4% and 1 ounce or 28 grams of Nectaron from New Zealand at 10.1%. I did that at flame out and, then immediately started chilling. I fermented with I-10 Mangostini, which is a hybrid Kveik strain from Imperial yeast. And then after fermentation, I dry hopped for 2 days with the same amount of Amarillo and Nectaron that I put in at flame out. That's 1 ounce or 28 grams of each of those. The original gravity was 1055, the final gravity 1006 for an ABV of 6.4%. And when we talked about it on the show, I said, can we target our ABV at 6.5? So pretty dang close.
Yeah.
But what I did was I bottled half of the beer plain, and then the other half I steam juiced 3 pounds, 11 ounces, or 1.7 kilograms of fresh peaches from the club store, and I pitted those. And I got 2 1/4 cups or 525 milliliters of peach juice at 5 bricks. Or 1020, and I was like, man, that doesn't seem like a lot of juice, and those peaches weren't very ripe. So what I did was I went to the store and I got some frozen peaches, and I steam juiced the same weight of the frozen peaches. I got the same volume, but I only got 3 bricks as opposed to the 5 bricks. So and that juice did not taste good. It didn't taste like much. The other juice, it had a bit of a pinkish hue because of the skins of the peaches, and it actually tasted like fresh peaches. So what I did was I put, I bottled half the batch and I kegged the other half and put the 2 1/4 cups of the fresh peach juice in the keg with the beer. So Steve and I tasted it the other day, and there wasn't much. The peach juice, it wasn't enough volume-wise, I don't think, to add a lot of character to the beer, but Steve felt that it kind of rounded out the flavors of the beer. So, all that to say, or all that to ask, what do you think? You've been sipping on the beer, I'm assuming, while I've been talking. So now I'm going to sip while you talk. What do you think?
It's got a nice aroma. You can definitely get the late hops in the aroma, and that's nicely done. It's reasonably clear. I mean, it's got all of those oats and stuff in it, so it's not crystal clear, but it's not a hazy either. And it tastes good. It's got a good, the level of bitterness. There's a nice crunch to it. It's, West Coast IPA level, level of bitterness. And yeah, it tastes good. It tastes like an IPA. Maybe the oats and the I think I can get the honey malt in it a little bit. Add a little bit more. There's a little bit more malt character than like if you get a traditional like West Coast IPA. It's like the hops just are there and the malt is very much in the background. There's a little more malt character.
And there is actual honey in there. The local honey here that I got from Caleb, it's delicious, but it just kind of tastes like honey. It's not a varietal.
Right. Just wildflower.
Yeah. So it's just it's just got a nice, delicious, just honey flavor. There's no, fruit, extraneous fruit or vegetable characteristics in there.
Right.
Like as if, you were to have a varietal. So I'm not sure how much of the honey character you're getting itself.
Yeah, it's very little. I wouldn't have said honey if I didn't know that it was in there.
But I think it might have,
which is fine. I mean, it's boosted the strength a little bit.
Yeah, and might have dried it out a little bit as well. I'm real happy with it. I mean, it's one of my favorite beers that I've done recently, especially hoppy beers. I think it ranks up there with the Bell's Two Hearted clone that I have brewed several times. And that recipe uses a whole lot more hops.
Yeah, this is good. I mean, the hops, you definitely got, I don't know how hard you worked at the water chemistry, but you definitely got it right. You got enough gypsum in there to give it a nice, the bitterness is nicely accentuated, but also there's the aroma and flavor come through nicely.
And it's also fermented with the I-10 Mangostini, which is a hybrid between two Kvike strains. I'm not sure, of course you'd have to do a side-by-side fermentation, with and without that yeast to know the impact. But I kind of, I kind of think that it had something to do with it because it sure is delicious. It certainly didn't help but hurt things.
Yeah, no, it. I don't know the details of that particular yeast, but I mean it tastes like an IPA,
And it was the fermentation was very quick. My spare bathroom is not the coolest place on the earth in the summertime. It's in like the lower to mid 70s Fahrenheit. So the day after I pitched that Mangostini, boy, it was just like chugging like a steam train. And that was before I knew that it was a Kvike. And so I was like, that looks a lot like a Kvike yeast. It's really going fast. And turns out it was. So I'm super, super happy with this beer. I would brew it again, definitely. I don't know that I would change anything.
No, I like it. I mean, it's interesting. It tastes to me a lot just like a straight up West Coast IPA, maybe with a little bit extra a variation in the malt, like a little bit of complexity there. I sort of hate using that term.
Complexity?
Yeah, well, it's just, I don't know. I mean, what does it mean?
It sounds good. It sounds,
it does.
Sounds smart.
It does, but I rather, I don't know. There's maybe to be more eloquent in my language, there's maybe a hint of, and I know it's not biscuit malt, but it's like honey malt has some similarities to that. There's that sort of low roasted, more roasted than more roasted or kiln than a base malt, but not quite, a dark roast. Well, not even into the light chocolate, but in that biscuit honey, there's a number of different malts. And didn't you say there was one that was the
blonde roast oat?
Roast oats, yeah. And that's what, like 25 Lovibonds, something like that.
Yeah, I don't have it in front of me. I don't have the stats in front of me, but yeah, it's a little darker. And again, it was only 4 ounces, but still. Right.
Yeah, and this is, I mean, it's not that those flavors are overpowering it. It's just that a little bit of a hint of them. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, super drinkable. And the peach one, the one with the peach juice, again, like Steve and I thought, if you were to, it doesn't just jump out as peach. If you're tasting them side by side, you can kind of pull it out. But it has a nice kind of rounding off. It rounds off the sharpness of the bitterness a little bit, and
that could be partially due just to the sweetness.
Yeah.
A little sugar in anything, cooking, brewing, or whatever. A lot of times gives an impression of sort of fullness and roundness, I guess.
Yeah, and I'm glad that I did up the bitterness charge at the beginning of the boil, because I like that sharpness. I like the bitterness that came out of that. It really cuts through, those fruity flavors, and makes it more of kind of a West Coast IPA than I think. If the bitterness was lower, I would think it would be more of an East Coast, or New England. But that the sharp bitterness really is complementary.
Yeah, and it's good because it's not. It's got some nice upfront bitterness, but that doesn't turn into like an astringent aftertaste.
Right.
The bitterness hits hard up front, and then it just leaves that sort of lupulin tongue afterwards.
Is that in the what they call it book that the doctors use, the definition, the lupulin tongue? Gotta have that added to that registry. Also, I have to, while you're on the line, I have to brag on our mostly your Texas table beer. 'Cause if you go to the YouTube video that I posted where Steve and I tasted that beer out on a pond. There's some comments, and one from a viewer named Victoria down in Florida. Victoria has brewed that recipe twice. Brewed it once as a small batch, liked it so much they brewed it again, upped the volume to 5 gallons, and then added a little bit of maltodextrin or something to boost the body up just a little bit.
Sure.
But Victoria from YouTube really liked that recipe.
Nice.
So yeah, you might want to go on there and check out exactly what Victoria said. But yeah, it's always fun, especially with experimental recipes. It's always fun, when you hear somebody actually try it and like it, and then take it to the next level and tweak it a little bit and make it their own.
Yeah, definitely. When I put out my first book, the Homebrew Recipe Bible, I remember getting comments from people like, I brewed this and I liked it. And it was, you feel good about that.
Yeah. So kudos. So we're going. Anything else to say about the honey peach IPA or the honey IPA in your hands?
No, I think this is one that like if I was doing this, I would say the recipe is, I might do some small tweaks, but I think you hit what we were shooting for,
Woo!
what you were shooting for. I mean, didn't you?
Yeah, yeah, it's delicious. I love that honey IPA. It's just a memory now. The I-10 Mangostini from our friends and sponsors at Imperial Yeast really did a great job. I-10 Mangostini is a hybrid Kveik yeast that's available through the end of this month, so get it while you can. I brewed a second beer with it, the red IPA that Matt Giovanisi from Brew Cabinet and I came up with, and I'm liking that beer more and more every time I taste it. Mangostini got to work right away on both and was finished in just a couple of days, and both were delicious. I got Pub from Imperial, spoiler, to ferment this porter that we're talking about, or going to talk about. It arrived in great shape thanks to the cold pack from High Gravity. The 200 billion cells got to work right away. My airlock was bubbling before bedtime, and I think the beer is probably already to keg. I like to say my stir plate is dusty because I don't use it anymore to make starters for moderate gravity 5-gallon batches with Imperial. Get with your local homebrew store to get I-10 Mangostini from Imperial before it's gone. It's seasonal and going back into hibernation at the end of this month. Check out all the rest of the dependable deliciousness at imperialyeast.com. That's imperialyeast.com. All right, let's. I've got an empty keg as we speak, so let's formulate something to put in my empty keg. And you suggested a porter, and I looked through. The closest thing I think we've done to formulating a porter recipe was a dry stout.
Yep.
And I don't think we actually brew that beer or not.
No.
I don't think so for some reason. But what is it about porter that you find intriguing or enjoyable?
Porter was one of the first beers that I brewed, and for many years I had my porter and my pale ale, and I would brew two batches of those every year, and then along with the other, like in my heyday, I was averaging like 20 batches of beer a year or whatever. And but I always brew a couple of the pale ale, which is just a flat out American pale ale, and I brewed the porter, which sort of back in the day when they called things robust porter versus brown porter or whatever, it was I generally categorized it as that and entered it in contests as that, and it did pretty well. And also I just liked it, and people liked it, and so I just kept. I kept tweaking it because, for one thing, I could brew it with the water that I have here in Bastrop. Like everything else, I needed to dilute way down with distilled water and then build up a mineral profile. But with the carbonate laden water I have here, I could just pour the water out of the tap, and there's my brewing water. Essentially. So it matched my. It matched my water chemistry here a lot, and I just liked it. I liked the roasty character, and the way my porter is like a little bit sharp. There's quite a bit of black malt in it, enough to, and then there's other roasted grains, enough that it's got like a coffee aroma but kind of an aggressive roasted grain character, and then it's hopped just enough that there's kind of a sharp hop bite to it, not like a double IPA or anything, but I mean you can taste it's roasty and smell it's roasty, and then when you taste it, it's like, oh, there's plenty of hop bitterness to go around, and with the roasted grains, I mean, even when I get the water chemistry right, which for me isn't hard, just turn on the tap water. There's a little bit when you use that much, the degree that I used roasted malts in it, there's a little bit of astringency that comes with it, but that's part of the beer and part of what I like. It's like when you taste coffee, there's a bitterness to coffee, but there's also a little bit of astringency, and you either like that or you don't. and I sort of like that.
So if it's so roasty, why is it not a stout?
I don't know because I called it porter.
It-
I think you could. There would be some people who would want to dissect it and say, because the majority malt or the majority roasted malt in it is black malt, it fits more along with porters than stouts. But I don't really care. I mean, porter is. It looks like a porter. It tastes like a porter. I could call it a stout, and it would work almost as well.
It'd be fun to enter bottles into both categories in a competition and see what happens.
Yeah, I could enter it in like I don't know, one of the stronger, not super strong stouts, like foreign export or something. It might do. I would have to boost the gravity though.
Yeah. So what gravity should we be shooting for with this beer?
You can make pretty much not any gravity you want, but you can go from a relatively low, like 1044, something around, upper 4% to, something around 6 or even 6.5, and it's fine. I like more often than not, I make mine start at maybe like 1052 and shoot for like, 5.2% alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
Something like that, very slightly stronger than like an American Pilsner, but not, I mean, and a lot of people have the impression that dark beers are always strong, and it doesn't need to be.
Yeah, I think the first time I had a Guinness, which is not a porter, but the first time I had a Guinness was in a little Irish pub in Boston, and I'd been used to drinking like Budweiser.
Yeah.
This is the late '80s, and I thought it tasted like bacon grease. And I was under the impression that I was, getting really drunk from, like I drank 2 pints of Guinness, and I was like, "Woo, I better slow down." But chances are,
Nope.
it might have been lower gravity than what I'd been used to drinking.
Yeah, Guinness is like draft Guinness is like 3.8. I shouldn't say this because I should Google it first, but it's low. It's not very strong beer.
Boy, I'm thirsty for a Guinness now.
Yeah.
So if you got your spreadsheet open, are we ready to like put some numbers in the cells?
Sure. Give me 1 second.
And I've got the only thing I've got left in my leftover grain bag is 4 ounces of Brice Victory malt.
Mm-hmm.
And I pitched that at you before we started recording, and you were, let's say, lukewarm to cool on that idea.
Yeah, I mean there's a lot of sort of space to explore in porter, and if you like biscuit malt and want that sort of thing in there, I tend to want to focus on the major, what I think of as the major parts of porter when I brew one, especially focus on the roast, and then stuff that supports the roast. Whereas to me, like the biscuit or anything like that is more competing. It's like something that's going to stick out and be different and not really mesh well. But there's a lot of room to roam within porter space. If I can make up a word, porter space.
I like their first album. So what base malt do we want to go with? Just do we want to go like authentic, quote unquote, and maybe cliche and go with Maris Otter, since this is a beer style largely from that part of the country or for part of the world?
Yeah, an English 2-row pale ale malt, and if it's Maris Otter, good. Yeah, that works well. You can do a U.S. pale malt too. It's again, there's a lot that you can do, and it's just kind of, and especially I don't look at things through the glasses of style and what's right and what's wrong. I tend to look at things like, does this work or not? And it's just, like U.S. pale malt versus British, it's going to be just a slightly different character. And I would say, yeah, do the English. That's where porter came from. It's good.
Yeah. Well, my default starting point whenever I formulate a 5-gallon or 19-liter recipe is 10 pounds or 4.5 kilograms. So should we start with that, or is that too high to start with for the base malts on this recipe?
No, that's going to bring us pretty much where we want. So we'll start with that, and we'll just adjust as we go on.
Okay. Now, a porter is not necessarily super chewy, but it's one that would be appropriate to use some crystal malts, I'm thinking, right?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I think because you've got again, if you focus on having the roast in there, like a really good roasty aroma and flavor, a little bit of that caramel sweetness to back it up, just to lay right under there, works well. So, and you can use any of the sort of mid-range crystal malts or a blend of them. I use generally either Crystal 40 or Crystal 60 or a blend of the two. Maybe 2/3 Crystal 40 or 60, but that, more recently I've stopped trying to be so fiddly with my recipes and I'll probably just put, Crystal 40 in it and be done with it, but
yeah,
or 60.
Yeah. My default for pale ales is generally Crystal 60, but I don't know that there's a whole lot of difference between 40 and 60.
There's just a little bit. What if we go with a pound of Crystal 60?
Okay. Yeah, it's a dark beer, but you don't want to go toward Crystal 120 or something like that, because then you start getting like raisin and dark fruit flavor.
That's too much.
You get darker color, but you also get some sweetness, some darker sweetness in there that you probably don't want. Or maybe you do. People can do what they want.
Yeah, it depends on. And then it depends a little bit on your attenuation. If you make a really dry porter, probably cutting down a little bit on the crystal malts would be a good thing. Whereas if you're making it sweeter, if it's going to end a higher, the sweetness is going to, be enhanced by the unfermented sugars. So yeah, there's room to play in there.
Now we start to get roasty. Now we bring in the darker color and the darker roastier flavors. So what should we lean on, and what percentage do we go there?
Yeah, I really like in any dark roasty beer, stouts, porters, or any even just beer that does not really have any category, roasted malts and roasted barley, which is a roasted unmalted grain, they really work together. Like different combinations of them work well. And I would say, using about, in a 5-gallon batch, having roughly a pound of the darkest roasted malts. You usually get to dark beer like to that nice place where there's a nice amount of roastiness. And so I might say, like, if we made half of the roasted malt component, black patent malt or black malt, and then did the split up the rest between roasted barley and chocolate malt.
Ooh, yeah.
That might be good. So what if we did half a pound of black malt,
otherwise known as black patent?
Yeah. And then, let's see, of the remaining half pound, what if we did 2/3 of it as chocolate? So that would be what? 0.5 times 2 divided by 3. Okay, 1/3 of a pound. Is that right?
Which would
No.
now you get to divide 16 by 3. That's we need to be doing whole ounces here. and the metric people are laughing. They're
Okay, yeah.
how many teaspoons is that?
Yeah. Target's 40 rods to the hogshead, and that's the way I likes it. Okay, what if we went with 5 ounces of chocolate malt and 3 ounces of roasted barley, the dark roasted barley?
Okay.
Then we've got, so 8 ounces of black malt, 5 of chocolate malt, and 3 of roasted barley. So we've got 16 ounces or a pound total in 5 gallons, and that's about right. And we've got also a pound of Crystal 60 in there.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty good. That's it. Yeah, you could go straight with that.
And I'll leave my 4 ounces of Victory. I'll leave it out.
That's you're gonna enjoy that decision.
We'll save it for the next one. Yeah, that sounds real good. And what's our gravity looking like on the calculator?
Well, it's a little high. I think if we drop the 2-row pale ale malt down to 8 pounds, then on my calculator that comes out to 1055, which gives us if the 75% attenuation, then we get 5.3
Oh, okay.
ABV, which is pretty good.
Yeah. Susan's going to like this. She likes dark beers. But she doesn't like a ton of hops. She doesn't like super bitter.
Right.
On the hops. So are we ready to move on to the hops part component?
Yeah.
Should we go English or should we go American?
I would try to pick. I wouldn't worry too much about the origin of it. Just is it going to work well with in the beer? And one thing I've noticed, there's like for a long time I used to use Northern Brewer in my porter every time I could get it because it supposedly has like a minty character to it. So chocolate and mint does well. But chocolate and some like cherries or other berries, raspberry, that can be good too. And there are hop varieties that have, there's supposedly a cherry component to it, or a strawberry, like Huel melon. They say has a strawberry note to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I would try to pick some hop that has a flavor that's going to work well with the sort of chocolatey notes, because chocolate malt doesn't taste exactly like cocoa, chocolate, whatever, but they're roasted to a similar specifications, and there are similarities. There's a reason they call it chocolate malt. And I would pick some sort of hop that has either a nice note that works well with chocolate, or a sort of a neutral hop that just tastes like just generally floral and hoppy.
I'm looking on highgravitybrew.com, and Huel melon is in stock.
Woo!
It's available. But we shouldn't. You don't want to use that for bittering, do you?
What's the alphas on it?
Let me look. 6 to 8%.
You could use it for bittering, or you could pick, Magnum or some other high alpha one to do the bittering, and then use the Huel melon as finishing hops.
Yeah. So what's the IBU that we should be targeting?
Well, again, we have a pretty wide range there. I would go with, and if you're gonna serve this to your wife and she doesn't like extremely hoppy beers, I would shoot for something like in the pale ale range. That's there's a hop bitterness there, but it's not overpowering.
Mm-hmm.
I would shoot for something like 40 IBUs.
Okay. So in the Ray Daniels Designing Great Beers, that's he uses the the IBU to gravity, the BU to gravity unit balance. So it's definitely if we're starting off at like 50 to or 55 gravity points to 40 bittering units. It's definitely weighing more toward the a lighter bitterness. So that's that's the way when you're formulating recipes, that's the way that you can think about, adding bitterness to your beer.
Yeah, and the dark grains are also going to add, the roast character is going to add some bitterness.
Mm-hmm.
So, 40 is going to be real respectable. You're not going to be. It should be nice and balanced, actually. I usually go a little bit higher than that, but maybe really only like 45 to 50, which is, it's a notch up, but it's not.
So should I just look around for a hop variety that like I like to add whole ounces of things, that way I don't have to open like half a packet of something and keep it on hand in the freezer for the future and then forget about it.
So look for something around 10 to 12% alpha acids.
Okay.
And that'll get you ballpark, and then the whirlpool hops or the late hops will boost that very, very slightly, but you don't need to worry about it.
Yeah, so we're talking like maybe an ounce or maybe two of the Huell Melon at flame out, or maybe just one.
I would go for just one, because what you really want, or what I really want in a porter, I highly recommend having the nose be dominated by the roasty aroma.
Mm-hmm.
That coffee smell.
Right.
You're going to be really happy with smelling that. And if there's a lot of hops mixed in, it's like, I like hops and I like roast, but when they're competing for attention, it's maybe not as, I wouldn't turn that beer down, but yeah, I would add an ounce at the end of the boil. It would be real respectable. Make a good beer.
And no dry hopping.
Yeah, with an ounce at the end, I don't think you need the additional dry hopping.
And would you go with a traditional English ale yeast?
Yeah, what is it, WLP 002 or Y yeast 1968 or any of those equivalents that are supposedly the Fuller's yeast. I like that one a lot. The thing is with that though, you need to build a healthy starter or else it's going to crap out too early. But any sort of reasonably attenuative, 1968 is on the low end of attenuation as those kind of things. But anything in the sort of moderate range for English yeast works well. Even I've even made it with 1056, or the WLP 001 or whatever, US 05 and whatever the other newer, alternatives to the Chico yeast are.
I know a brand of yeast where you don't have to use a starter.
There you go. Use that.
I shall.
What is this wonderful brand?
Well, let me tell you about it.
Yeah.
Let me tell you about it, friend.
It just happened.
Let me get my straw hat and striped jacket from my closet here. Mm-hmm. We got yeast right here in River City.
Remember not having to make a starter? Pepperidge Farm remembers.
We got yeast that starts with Y and rhymes with I, which stands for Imperial. Imperial yeast.
That stands for pool. Wait, what?
Okay. Yes. Well, there you go. So that's our ingredients. It sounds. I'm happy with that.
Malt, hops, yeast.
Yes.
And then water. That's a big key in the whole porter thing. It's really just getting enough, sodium bicarbonate or whatever the form of carbonate you use is. Chalk is sort of hard to dissolve, but get enough carbonates in there that it's going to balance out the sort of quote unquote sourness of the darkest malts.
I need to send you my water report from Ward Labs so you can take a look at it. But the beer that you sampled earlier, I didn't do any water adjustments at all on that. That's just my filtered tap water. So if a hoppy beer tastes really good with my water, since we're doing a roasty beer, should I change things? Most likely, should I be adding some stuff?
Yeah, I think it's Yeah, send me a report. I think it'll uh, mainly be a case of just needing to add some carbonates. And there's also, just to randomly plug my website, I did have that series. Remember, like easy, I forget what I called it, easy water calculations. You just basically looked up what you wanted, and it gave, it gave the, starting from distilled water or water with very little minerals. Here's what you would add. But yeah, send me a report. I can tell you how much to add.
And that's at beerandgardeningjournal.com.
Yes.
And I've also got my digits entered into my brewing software that I use. So, I could also, kind of look at that. I could actually use the tools that I have on hand.
Yeah, it's not something that you really need to like super fine tune, but being in the ballpark versus not is really very noticeable on a beer like this. Yeah, so some adjustment of water chemistry gets, if you don't have enough carbonates in the beer, the mash pH drops a little low, which in and of itself it might hurt your efficiency a tiny bit, but isn't really the problem. It's when the beer ferments and the pH drops even lower, the beer just like the aroma of the roasted malts just doesn't like jump out of the glass. Like when you smell like a Guinness, it's like, whoa, that's that's roasty, it's coffee, it's it's just the aroma is just pouring out of the glass. If your pH is too low, it's like you have to go hunting for the roasty notes. And so getting your pH right in the mash is going to set you up for having hitting the right pH, in the final beer, which is where it influences the character of the character, and especially the aroma of the darkest strains.
Anything special that we need to do as far as the rest of the procedure, the mashing, or the boil, or anything like that?
Well, the nice thing about porter, you can brew it, just like you'd brew a pale ale, just like you'd brew sort of any, English ale. There are, because of course they have homebrewers that have come up with little quirks of handling some things. Like some people will crush their pale malts and then crush their dark malts separately. And because dark malts, the intense heat that they go through, they actually shrink in the roasting process, so they're generally thinner. So some people will tighten up their mill gap and run, and that doesn't hurt, but you really don't need it. The dark roasted malts are really porous inside, and they give up their color very quickly. So being slightly, not quite as crushed as they, quote unquote, should be compared to pale ale isn't really gonna make that much of a difference. And another thing people will do is they'll take the pale malts and the crystal, and they'll mash that, and then near the end of the mash they'll stir in the dark malts to the top of the mash, and then recirculate it and go on from there. And again, that's not going to hurt, but you're going to drop the pH. Like if you were at the right pH for the pale mash, then it's going to drop unless you stir in along with the dark malts enough bicarbonate to balance that out. And the calculations aren't that hard, but it's just how much would you need? If you did it, just mix it in with the grain bill. But I don't know. There's something to say about just being lazy and just crushing all your malts together, and because it really doesn't. I've tried all these, and you really don't gain much by the extra effort put into, or anything really. Even if it was a small gain, it would be worth me to do it. But if it's just like I can't tell a difference here, yeah. So I would say just crush all your malts together, and be done with it.
Yeah, I think I have brew in a bag, or I do brew in a bag. So I've got the gap on my grain mill, my personal grain mill. Although high gravity is probably going to be milling these for me because I can choose that when I order. But my own personal grain mill, I've got it set to the most narrow gap possible on it, because I don't have to worry about any stuck sparges or anything because I got the bag. But also, I don't recirculate, so I guess I could, in theory, the last 10 minutes of the mash or something like that, I could dump in, say, the dark malts, into that last 10 minutes of the mash and stir them in, if I was worried about the pH too much. But I'm kind of like you. I'm like, it's all right. It's gonna be fine.
One thing you can do though, because if you like just scoop like a handful of, especially like chocolate malt and smell it, it's very aromatic. You smell all that, and all those are volatile chemicals. Volatile compounds or whatever. If you scoop up black malt, interestingly, it smells like the intensity is far less than chocolate malt because it's been roasted to the point that all those volatiles are blown off. But if you really, if you want that coffee, that chocolate, that roasted aroma from these malts, one thing about putting it through a full mash and then boiling it for an hour or 90 minutes is you've, volatilized those and driven them off. A sort of a crazy trick you can try at the end if you want, if like you really want to just be bowled over by the roasty aroma of your beer, is go through, brew the recipe as is, just normal procedures for making an ale, but then make a French press extract of, pick whatever the malts you have that smelled the strongest, and that you don't need a lot, and 4 ounces of say like a chocolate malt or even a light chocolate malt, or there are actually coffee malts out there, but something that just like that's the ticket, lightly crush 4 ounces of that, pour boiling water on it, make a French press extract, and just pour that in the beer, either like right near the end of fermentation or even like when you package the beer, when you keg it or bottle it.
Wow.
And then you get, because then you you put boiling water on it, so you volatilize some and you'll smell it. It'll be awesome. But you haven't gone through, it's been a short contact time because you don't pour the boiling water in there and wait 90 minutes to do the French press extract. You just, you give it a couple minutes, pour that in there, and you will have, just like a coffee, chocolate, roasty, like aroma that just knocks your socks off.
Huh.
If that's your thing.
If you like your socks.
If you like your socks, deposit it outside your body for a large blast of roast flavor and aroma. And I do.
I'm looking forward to this.
That was one beer turned me into that. Rambling.
You're gonna be doing that. Two. If you drink a second one of those, you're gonna be doing that growly heavy metal karaoke thing that I've seen you do on video.
Yeah, that would be awesome. That one beer turned me into a sort of it was almost a Steve Martin
or a Bill Murray.
That was the one bit we really wanted.
Or Bill Murray at the golf ball washer. Oh
yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Mrs. Johnson or whatever it was.
Yeah.
One of the parts that got cut out on network TV. Oh, all right. Well, it sounds like we better stop. I think we got all the pertinent information.
I think so.
I'm looking forward to it. You don't think of porters in the summertime, but it's just me hoping that fall is just around the corner.
Yeah, it's as much as I like porter, it's not really for me. It's not like a summer beer, but yeah, fall rolls around, sure.
Oh man.
And I was at the grocery store this morning, and the Oktoberfest arrived.
Oh.
It seems like earlier every year, but which is fine with me because I love Oktoberfest beers.
Oh, I do too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I sent you when you said that you were going to be that you had some Oktoberfest. You texted me, and I texted back, and I hope you took it in the spirit that I meant it. I texted back something like, "Oh, Oktoberfest are releasing too early. Oh, and I hate pumpkin spice, and oh, the cloudy beers, and oh, all that other stuff."
Oh no, you know me. I took offense to that. Like, real, I can't believe James. I was on the internet in moments registering my disgust.
On the We Hate James Spencer Reddit that's out there, I'm sure.
Yeah, have you read it? It's awesome.
Reddit, I started it.
James Spencer hate.
I'm the biggest contributor. What are you talking about? All right. Well, let's stop the recording so we can have another beer and just talk.
Sounds good.
All right. Thanks, Chris.
All right. Yep.
Well, thanks again to Chris. I actually used chemicals in brewing this beer. Got off my lazy butt and added some chemicals. So I have very high hopes for it. I think it's going to be tremendous. The original gravity was 1044, so it's going to be sessionable for the fall weather. If we can make it to fall, whew, it's hot. I'm telling you. If you have brewing questions, show suggestions, or just want to say howdy, write to James at basicbrewing.com or just fill out the contact form on basicbrewing.com. And please don't forget to tell us where you're from. Check out our mobile-friendly shop at basicbrewingshop.com. Thanks to everybody supporting us through our Patreon page. Special goodies coming your way. Check that out at patreon.com/basicbrewing. Until next time, until then, thanks for listening, everybody. I'm James Spencer. Production help for Basic Brewing Radio and our website is provided by Kelly Dodson. Basic Brewing Radio is a production of Active Voicing. We'll talk to you next time, everybody. In the meantime, stay well and stay tuned. So long.